A nuclear physicist walked out of North Korea with a secret no one was supposed to see. For 25 years, Drive. Kim Sung-chul helped build the country's nuclear program at Yongbyon. Then one of his colleagues died from radiation. The government called it a routine accident. No investigation, no explanation, no record. That was the moment Kim made a decision. He began copying classified files, weapons designs, reactor maps, safety reports the government buried, and one thing no one in North Korea had ever written before: a complete plan to dismantle the entire nuclear program. He hid the files on a USB drive, sewed it into his clothes. Then he took his family and walked toward the frozen Tumen River, because if the regime discovered what he was carrying, none of them would survive the night. My name is Kim Sung-chul, and this is how I escaped North Korea. With a blueprint to take its nuclear weapons apart, a radiation shield failed at Yongbyon. No replacement parts, no budget, no plan, just an order to keep going. A 42-year-old scientist followed that order. His name was Drive Choi, husband, father of 2 daughters, 20 years at the same facility. He lasted one night in the hospital. By morning, his hair was already falling out. By evening, he was gone. The death certificate listed it as an occupational accident. The word radiation appeared nowhere. His wife wasn't allowed to cry in public. Tears would raise questions nobody wanted answered. That death didn't just take a man, it woke one up. Drive. Kim Sung-chul had spent 25 years inside those same walls, the same labs, the same classified corridors, the same silence that settles over a place where everyone knows too much and says too little. He was decorated, trusted, called a model scientist in a model family, by the party that ran every corner of his life. But the night after Choi died, Kim sat alone in his study. He opened his desk drawer, pulled out a small USB drive no bigger than his thumb. Then he found a needle and thread, and he began sewing it into the lining of his underwear. What was on that drive he kept to himself, even from his wife of 28 years, even from his son, who worked at the same facility just a few corridors away. What he was carrying wasn't a weapon, it was the opposite of one. My name is Kim Sung-chul. That's not my real name. I'm 58 years old. In North Korea, I was a nuclear physicist, a doctor of the field. You've heard of Yongbyon. I spent 25 years inside its walls. People of my generation had something to hold on to. Serving the country meant something, real, or it felt that way, when you were young enough to need it to. I told myself I was building a stronger homeland, that our sacrifices meant the next generation would be safer. I said it enough times that I believed it. The scientist's village near Yongbyon wasn't bad by North Korean standards. Better rations than ordinary citizens. Reliable heat in winter. My wife, Soon-hee, had taught chemistry at a university before we married. After that, she ran the house, raised our son. My son Chul-soo, now 32, worked as a technician at the same facility. Father and son, building the nation's nuclear program together. The party called us a model family. We believed them. My daughter-in-law Young-suk came from Pyongyang, the daughter of a party official. When Chul-soo brought her home, we were proud. And my grandson Junho, 7 years old that summer, everyone said he had my face. He had my stubbornness too, though I never said that out loud. That was the life we had. Then came June. It started with a report I was never supposed to see. An internal assessment. The kind that gets written when the people in charge already know the answer, and don't want it on record. It detailed the state of Yongbyon's aging infrastructure, radiation shielding past its operational lifespan, cooling systems teetering on the edge of failure. No budget to fix any of it. No replacement parts. No timeline for improvement. The final line read: the probability of a major incident is high. However, in accordance with the General Secretary's directive to build a nuclear-capable state, all experiments and development must continue. I read that sentence twice. Then I set the report on my desk, folded my hands, and looked out the window at the facility I'd given my adult life to. We were sitting on top of a bomb, still building another one. That night, I opened a drawer and held the USB in my palm. I'd been thinking about this moment for 10 years, long before I ever put a single file on the drive. A decade of quiet research, done late at night, in the margins of the official work, done in secret, not because it was forbidden though it was, but because I wasn't sure it would ever matter. The research wasn't about building weapons, it was about safely taking them apart. Soon he noticed before I said a word. She found a map of China in my desk drawer one morning while I was at work. The Tumen River traced in red. She put it back, closed the drawer, and said nothing. That evening at dinner her hands were shaking slightly as she served the soup. She didn't mention the map. She didn't ask where I'd been going nights. She knew when silence was the only safe answer. 25 years of marriage. You learn each other's languages. One evening, Junho crept into my room in the dark, half asleep and hungry. I warmed up corn porridge in the kitchen, our version of a midnight snack, and sat across from him while he ate. He looked up at me with those heavy, half-closed eyes and said, "Grandpa, what did you hide in your bag yesterday?" My chest tightened. 7 years old, and he'd already seen something. "It's for work," I told him. "Is it a secret?" "Yes." "Can you keep it for me?" He nodded seriously and went back to his porridge. I watched him eat, spooning it carefully, still half in a dream, and I sat there wondering what kind of man this country would make him, if we stayed. By August, I found out my son had been doing the same thing I was. I walked past his room one afternoon while he was at work, noticed an open drawer, and saw it Chinese yuan, stacked neatly, as much as I'd saved, maybe more. We never spoke about it directly. We didn't need to. He'd read the same kind of reports I had. He'd come to the same quiet conclusion. Some things you don't say out loud in a house with thin walls and a 7-year-old. August 15, 2025. Drive. Choi came to work that morning, looking like a man who'd already received the news about himself. Pale, still, the kind of stillness that isn't peace. He told me what happened in a low voice. The shield failed. There were no parts. They ran the experiment anyway. I went to the hospital during my lunch break. Choi was in isolation. His skin had already begun to break down. His hair was coming away in clumps on the pillow. "Senior." His voice barely carried across the room. I pulled a chair close. "I made something," he said. "We both did. 20 years. And it couldn't protect us from itself." I didn't answer. "What do I tell my daughters?" He looked at the ceiling. That their father served the country? He died that night. The Ministry of State Security issued a silence order the next morning. Occupational accident. No press. No public record. His wife stood at the funeral with dry eyes, not because she wasn't breaking, but because asking questions in grief was a luxury she couldn't afford. I drove home that evening in the dark. Soon he brought tea. She read my face before I opened my mouth. "Who?" she asked. "Choi." She set the cup down. "How old was he?" 42. We sat without speaking. There was nothing useful left to say. That night, I made my decision. The truth is, I'd been making it for months. The map, the money, the USB, the research that had taken 10 years to complete. That night, I just accepted it. October over Yongbyon. After Choi's death, the Ministry of State Security tightened everything. Bag checks at every gate, new surveillance cameras in the labs, plainclothes agents stationed in the halls pretending to read clipboards. A security officer named Pak called me into his office one afternoon. "Comrade Kim, have you noticed any unusual behavior from colleagues? Documents being copied? Unauthorized contact with outsiders?" "No," I said. He watched me for a moment the way those men watch cataloging, measuring. "Your son works at the same facility." "He does. Young people need guidance. South Korean radio, foreign influences. If your son behaves unusually, you are expected to report it." He was telling me to inform on my own child. I said I understood and went back to work. That evening, soon he met me at the door with a look I recognized. "The People's Unit leader came today," she said. He searched the house, the rice container, every closet. He asked if we had Chinese money, or USB drives. The USB was sewn into my clothes. It had been every day since June. Mid-October, Junho came home from school and pulled at my sleeve. "Grandpa, my teacher asked if we had any Chinese things in the house. What did you tell her?" I said no. Then she asked if I'd ever seen you meet any strangers. 7 years old. They were using him to watch me. That night, after Junho was asleep, the four of us gathered in the living room and closed the door. Young Suk spoke first. "We have to go. We can't keep waiting." Chul-soo agreed without hesitation. I looked at my family, soon his quiet fear, my son's steady resolve, my daughter-in-law's exhausted eyes, and I told them what I'd been holding back since June. "I've been in contact with people in China, a Korean Chinese broker. I reached out in June, when I was there on a research trip." The room went very still. "Who are these people?" Soon he asked. "South Koreans." Her face went pale. "I offered them a trade," I said. "Our safety, in exchange for what I've been carrying." "The USB," Chul-soo said. "Yes, Dad. Is it weapons designs?" "That's part of it, but not the reason they want it." I looked at each of them. "There's more on there. I'll explain everything when we're safe. I need you to trust me until then." No one argued. That, more than anything, told me what I needed to know about my family. Late October, Chul-soo came home with a bruise across his jaw. Security had pulled him in for questioning, held him for most of the day. No evidence, they said, just concerns. A warning. Young Suk grabbed him and held on. She was crying quietly into his collar. "We have to go now, before they..." "I know," I said. "I'm making the call." I reached out to the broker that night. The response came within days. "Everything is in place. We come for you on December 23rd. 23 days. The night before we left, I sat at my desk after the house went quiet and held the USB one last time. 25 years of work, all of it compressed into something the size of a thumb. weapons schematics, facility maps, radiation exposure zones, internal safety assessments that the government had classified, and then quietly forgotten. And the other thing, the thing I'd spent a decade building in secret, a manual, not how to build a nuclear device. Anyone with clearance and enough time could piece that together. This was the opposite. A step-by-step guide for safely decommissioning North Korea's nuclear sites. How to dismantle what we'd built without poisoning the ground, the water, the people who would still be living there when it was all over. North Korea's government had spent decades perfecting the art of building these weapons. Nobody had ever thought seriously about how to unbuild them. If reunification came, and I believed it would, eventually someone would have to walk into those facilities and make them safe. Without the right knowledge, that attempt could kill more people than the weapons ever did. A decommissioning done wrong would scatter radiation across half the peninsula. That's what the drive was for. That's why I wore it against my skin every single day. I put the USB away, turned off the light, and lay down next to my wife. Neither of us slept. December 23, 2025. 2 in the morning, the phone rang. Drive. Kim, it's Lee. Change of plans. We move tonight 10 o'clock. Why the change? Intelligence from Seoul. Security runs a sweep tomorrow morning. You won't get another window. I woke everyone. We packed in the dark, quietly, light. Too much luggage draws the wrong kind of attention. At 10, we slipped out the back of the house. The mountain path behind the village was dark and uneven. The moon was bright, too bright. The kind of night where you feel exposed just walking in it. Broker Lee was waiting at the trailhead, younger than I'd expected, mid-30s. He moved like a man who'd done this before. The car is this way. 3 hours to the border. We climbed in without a word. Chul-soo leaned close and whispered in my ear, "Father, this is too smooth. Something is off." He was right. I'd known it for weeks, but there was no turning back. The first checkpoint had no one in it, just a booth with the lights off and the barrier raised. We passed through without slowing down. Chul-soo stared back at it through the rear window. Lee said nothing. An hour later, the Tumen River came into view between the trees. The water was dark. The far bank was barely visible. We climbed out. The December air hit like a wall of cold, the kind that gets into your lungs and stays there. Lee led us to the bank. The river was half frozen, solid in places and terrifyingly thin in others. I reached down and picked Junho up. He gripped my shoulders without being told. 7 years old, and he already knew what kind of moment this was. Chul-soo stayed at my side. Young Suk had soon his arm. "Watch the ice," Lee said. "Stay in my tracks." We stepped down onto the river. 1 foot, then the other. A crack somewhere under us, a sound like a knuckle popping in a quiet room. Junho pressed his face against the back of my neck. "Grandpa, I'm scared." "Hold on," I said. "Just hold on." We were halfway across when a light swept toward us from the north bank. "A patrol, moving along the shore." "Down," Lee said quietly. We dropped flat onto the ice. Junho buried himself against my coat. The cold came up through everything and into our bones. The light moved closer, sweeping in wide arcs across the ice, and then it turned, slowly, and moved away. "Now, run." We pushed up and ran. The ice groaned under us. Under my right foot it cracked through, and I felt the water black and shocking cold rush in around my boot. I lost a step, started to go down. Chul-soo's hand was on my arm before I hit the ice. "Don't stop." I handed Junho forward to him and found my footing. Young Suk, and soon he pulled from my other side. All 5 of us working together in the dark, and the cold without a single word exchanged. We hit the far bank, China. Soon he sat down on the frozen ground and couldn't get back up. She was crying, the kind of crying that happens when something that's been locked inside for months finally breaks loose. "We're out," she said. We actually got out. Junho pulled back from Chul-soo's arms and looked at me. His eyes were wide. His cheeks were red from the cold. "Grandpa, did we win?" "Yes," I said. "Yes, we did." I turned to Lee. "The checkpoint, the patrol that looked away, that was arranged." He was quiet. "South Korea?" I asked. "Yes, since June, since I first contacted you." "Since before that," he said. I understood then. "Drive, Choi, in that hospital, losing his hair, telling them find Kim Sung-chul. He built the weapons. He can unbuild them. That was his last gift. A safe house in Yongbyon, then Bangkok, then Seoul, January 5, 2026. Incheon International Airport, evening. The 5 of us walked through the arrivals gate into the noise and light of South Korea. A man in a dark suit was waiting with a small sign. "Drive, Kim Sung-chul?" "Yes, National Intelligence Service. We'd like to talk." The next morning, a conference room, government officials across a long table. I placed the USB on the surface between us. 25 years, I said. "That's what's on there." The NIST director picked it up and set it down carefully. "We've reviewed the contents, the weapons data, the facility configurations." He paused. And the decommissioning manual. The room was quiet. Drive. Kim, if we follow this plan, can we realistically close those sites without a catastrophe? Yes. In stages, over 10 years. It has to be done carefully, but it can be done. No radiation leaks, no mass evacuation. The people near those sites, they'll be safe. The Minister of Unification leaned forward. We want you to lead the task force, post-reunification nuclear site safety. I'm a defector, I said. You trust me with something like that? You carried that drive sewn into your clothes. For 7 months, the director said. You brought your family across the Tumen River in December. Drive. Kim, if we can't trust you, the word doesn't mean anything. By spring, others were coming. Word spread somehow inside Yongbyon that one of their own had made it out, that there was another way. 5 more scientists crossed over in June alone. Each one brought something with them, pieces of the picture I hadn't been able to carry. In July, the government announced the Task Force for Nuclear Site Safety. My name was on the charter. I kept teaching at the university. I kept meeting with the new arrivals, helping them settle, listening to what they'd seen. August, I took the family up to Namsan, the mountain at the center of Seoul. The city spread out below us, lit up, loud. People moving through it like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. Junho pressed his face against the railing and stared. Grandpa, when do we go back? When things change, I said. Will you take me to where you grew up? I'll take you everywhere. Soon he took my hand. We stood there for a while without talking, looking north toward the line that still cuts this peninsula in half. Was it worth it? She asked quietly. The wind came up warm from the south. Ask me again, I said, when it's over. My name is Kim Sung-chul. I spent 25 years building something I'm no longer proud of. I spent 10 more years quietly, secretly learning how to take it apart. I'm not a hero. I'm a man who made something dangerous, and decided he had to be the one to undo it. That's not courage. That's just arithmetic. Reunification will come. I don't know when, but I will be ready. The work is already done. It's waiting. My grandson is in the 2nd grade now. He complains about homework. He wants a dog. He eats too much rice. He has friends, and a full stomach, and a bedroom that's his. He has no idea what his grandfather carried across that river. And that is the whole point. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please subscribe and leave a comment below. More stories from the other side coming soon.